the Phoenix plan, because I know this is going to shape how everybody thinks about what they're getting ready to do. And in my head, I think I had been thinking that this would only need to be targeted to a subset of first years who are getting ready to become second years, because I had an assumption that a number of those people would already be in a place where you felt like there didn't need to be this major intervention in order to get them ready to start the next year strong. And so I want to just sort of have clarified for me, is this indeed for all second years? And if so, then what's the rationale for asking everybody to participate versus maybe a subset of people who didn't get to where we wanted them to get this past year?
It is actually, the second year induction sessions are actually for all core members, and what we're also tying into it, the first part that I didn't mention, is a whole reflection on like the core values in action, because that's something that we've seen kind of play out in our region in a lot of different ways. So that's the first section of it, and then this ground zero component is the second. The part that I didn't expand on, and Rachel, I'm glad that you pushed me here, is that what's going to come out of this induction session is that each individual core member is going to complete their own individualized, like ground zero support / development plan. So within that plan, it will be very clear what the core member needs. So we're envisioning some type of like graphic organizer in which like the core member reflects on each one of their foundational tools and says, this is what was strong about it. These are the changes that I'm going to make based on like reflecting on my data this year and lessons learned from this year. These are possible resources that I might use, and this is the support that I need from either my PD or for somebody else.
Or I need no support.
Or I need no support. If no support is needed, then no support is needed. And so that document, that reflection on each of their tools, is going to be shared with the PD at their end of year meeting. And so that will actually be a tool for which the PD can then manage that core member over the summer. So they'll know who they need to be checking in with, who they need to be following up with, who they need to schedule collaborative working sessions with, and who is okay, like, supplies with.
Yeah. Great. I love, I mean, that sounds phenomenal. I love hearing that extra detail. And it also makes me think that for regions who feel like the idea of targeting all of their second years is overwhelming, you also could do something where you sort of triage and just focus on a smaller group who you know are even more likely to need help. So just sort of people keeping in mind that you have this range of options, because I think that sounds phenomenal and very comprehensive. And then there may be other people who are feeling like, gosh, I'm not sure that's the degree of what we could prioritize given where we are and other factors. And there's also a way to do it that is more like, let's think about what's the smallest subset of our second year core who we really want to focus on in this effort.
Great, so thank you, Quanna, for sharing, and I think this is really helpful to bring out what level of differentiation you should be thinking about. We would also conserve energy given the various things that you're doing in round zero. I know a lot of people are thinking about this right now, and so, and I also know we have a lot to talk about and think about. If you are interested in continuing this discussion and focusing on this in our planning time tomorrow morning, could you please put a note in your question bag so we can see if there's a group big enough to set aside a table for, and that way we can continue this conversation if that makes sense. I did see one urgent comment that we'll take before we move on.
Yes, this is Jessica from the DC team. We just wanted to share how we're approaching our second year core members. We know that there is a big gap across many of our core members with foundational tools. So for this coming year, we've already laid out the expectations for them. They have expectations to turn in their deliverables, and we set a hard deadline, but an optional deadline at the end of July, toward the end of July. If any core member who turns it in, oh, sorry about that. We're giving everyone a deadline for second years in July for folks who turn in their foundational tools. During that 1 week in July, if they turn it in, their program director reviews it, they make the revisions by the end of the week, it's finalized, then that's great, and they're ready for the first day of the year. If it's not finalized, or if they didn't even turn it in during that time, that's okay too. We're having a second year summit in the very beginning of August. Anyone who doesn't have finalized tools at that time is required to go to the second year summit. And during those 3 days, we're going to be giving them a lot of direct support and training in having finalized tools. And the second year summit is going to be a scaffold for the different groups of So.
Thank you. Okay, I want to make a slight transition here to talking about our final pitfall, and this is the pitfall of the core member who will do it for TFA.